Welcome back, Fan-Fueled family. Today, we're back to the Elder Scrolls Reading Club with our 13th episode. I hope none of you have triskaidekaphobia. Just a warning for those that may be bothered by it, this story does contain a brief and lightly graphic mention of suicide. If you feel bothered by that sort of thing, I understand if you want to click off the video now. It's not much, but I know that it can really bother some people, and I didn't want to just drop it out of nowhere. The wind blew over the open plain, jostling the few trees within to move back and forth with the irritation of it. A young man in bright green turban approached the army and gave his chieftain's terms for peace to the commander. He was refused. It was to be battle, the Battle of Ain Kolar. So the chief Imbez had decreed his open defiance and his horsemen were at war once again. Many times the tribe had moved into territory that was not theirs to occupy, and many times the diplomatic approach had failed. It had come to this at long last. It was just as well with Mindothrax. His allies may win or lose, but he would always survive. Though he had occasionally been on the losing side of a war, never once in all his 34 years had he lost in hand-to-hand combat. The two armies poured like dual frothing streams through the dust, and when they met, a clamor rang out, echoing into the hills. Blood, the first liquor the clay had tasted in many a month, danced like powder. The high and low battle cries of the rival tribes met in harmony as the armies dug into one another's flesh. Mindothrax was in the element he loved. After 10 hours of fighting with no ground given, both commanders called a mutual and honorable withdrawal from the field. The camp was positioned in a high-walled garden of an old burial ground adorned by springtide blossoms. As Mindothrax toured the grounds, he was reminded of his childhood home. It was a happy and sad recollection, the purity of childhood ambition, all of his schooling in the ways of battle, but tinged with memories of his poor mother. A beautiful woman looking down at her son with both pride and unspoken sorrow. She never talked about what troubled her, but it came as no surprise to any when she took the walk across the moors and was found days later, her throat slit open by her own hand. The army itself was like a colony of ants, newly shaken. Within a half-hour's time after the end of the battle, they had reorganized as if by instinct. As the medics looked to the wounded, someone remarked with a measure of admiration and astonishment, "Look at Mindothrax, his hair isn't even out of place." "He is a mighty swordsman," said the attending physician. "The sword is a greatly overvalued article," said Mindothrax, nevertheless pleased with the attention. "Warriors pay too much attention to striking and not enough in defending strikes. The proper way to go into battle is to defend yourself and to hit your opponent only when the ideal moment arises." "I prefer a more straightforward approach," smiled one of the wounded. "It is the way of the horsemen." "If it is the way of the Beolse tribes to fail, then I renounce my heritage," said Mindothrax, making a quick sign to the spirits that he was being expressive, not blasphemous. "Remember what the great blade master Gaiden Shinji said, the best techniques are passed on by the survivors. I have been in 36 battles and I haven't a scar to show for them. That is because I rely on my shield and then my blade, in that order. What is your secret? Think of melee as a mirror. I look to my opponent's left arm when I am striking with my right. If he is prepared to block my blow, I blow not. Why exert undue force?" Mindothrax cocked an eyebrow. "But when I see his right arm tense, my left arm goes to my shield. You see, it takes twice as much power to send force than it does to deflect it. When your eye can recognize whether your opponent is striking from above or at angle or in an uppercut from below, you learn to pivot and place your shield just so to protect yourself. I could block for hours if need be, but it only takes a few minutes or even seconds for your opponent used to battering to leave a space open for your own strike." "What was the longest you've ever had to defend yourself?" asked the wounded man. "I fought a man once for an hour's time," said Mindothrax. "He was tireless with his bludgeoning, never giving me a moment to do aught but block his strikes. But finally, he took a moment too long in raising his cudgel, and I found my mark in his chest. He struck my shield 1,000 times, and I struck his heart but once, but that was enough." "So he was your greatest opponent?" asked the medico. "Oh, indeed not," said Mindothrax, turning his great shield so the silvery metal reflected his own face. "There is he." The next day, the battle recommenced. Chief Imbez had brought in reinforcements from the islands to the south. To the horror and disgrace of the tribe, mercenaries, renegade horsemen, and even some Reachman witches were included in the war. As Mindothrax stared across the field at the armies assembling, putting on his helmet and readying his shield and blade, he thought again of his poor mother. Why had she never been able to look at her son without grief? Between sunrise and sundown, the battle raged. A bright blue sky overhead burned down on the combatants as they rushed against one another over and over again. In every melee, Mindothrax prevailed. A foe with an axe rained a series of strokes against his shield, but every one was deflected until at last Mindothrax could best the warrior. A spear maiden nearly pierced the shield with her first strike, but Mindothrax knew how to give with a blow, throwing her off balance and leaving her open for his counter-strike. Finally, he met a mercenary on the field, armed with shield and sword and a helm of golden bronze. For an hour and a half they battled. Mindothrax tried every trick he knew. When the mercenary tensed his left arm, he held back his strike. When his opponent rose his sword, his shield rose too and expertly blocked. For the first time in his life, he was battling another defensive fighter. Stationary, reflective, with enough energy to battle for days if need be. Occasionally, another warrior would enter into the fray, sometimes from Mindothrax's army, sometimes from his opponent's. These distractions were swiftly dispatched and the champions returned to their fight. As they fought, circling one another, matching block for blow and blow for block, it dawned on Mindothrax that here at last he was fighting the perfect mirror. It became more a game, almost a dance, than a battle of blood. It was not until Mindothrax missed his own step, striking too soon, throwing himself off balance, that the promenade was ended. He saw, rather than felt, the mercenary's blade rip across him from throat to chest. A good strike, the sort he himself might have delivered. Mindothrax fell to the ground, feeling his life passing. The mercenary stood over him, prepared to give his worthy adversary the killing blow. It was a strange, honorable deed for an outsider to do, and Mindothrax was greatly moved. Across the battlefield he heard someone call a name similar to his own. Jurafax! The mercenary removed his helmet to answer the call. As he did so, Mindothrax saw through the slits of his helmet his own reflection in the man. It was his own close-set eyes, red and brown hair, thin and wide mouth, and blunt chin. For a moment, he marveled at the mirror before the stranger turned back to him and delivered the death stroke. Jurafax returned to his commander and was well paid for his part in the day's victory. They retired for a hot meal under the stars in a garden by an old cairn that had previously been occupied by their foes. The mercenary was strangely quiet as he observed the land. "Have you been here before, Jurafax?" asked one of the tribesmen who had hired him. "I was born a horseman just like you. My mother sold me when I was just a babe. I have always wondered how my life might have been different had I not been bartered away. I might never have been a mercenary. There are many things that decide our fate," said the witch. "It is madness to try to see how you might have taken this turn or that in the world. There are none exactly like yourself, so it is foolish to compare." "But there is one," said Jurafax, looking to the stars. "My master, before he set me free, said that my mother had twin sons when I was born. She could only afford to raise but one child, but somewhere out there is a man just like me, my brother. I hope to meet him." The witch saw the spirits before her and knew the truth that the twins had met already. She remained silent and stared into the fire, banishing the thoughts from her head, too wise to tell all. As always, let's talk key terms first. Ein Kohler is a battlefield in High Rock, made famous by this specific battle. Horsemen? Come on, really, Editor Me? That's a bad joke even by our standards. Yeah, I know, but you didn't have to actually include it. No, I know that, but you could have cut it. That's the point of having an editor. You can choose to leave stuff on the cutting room floor. Did you just wink at me? Ugh, whatever. Horsemen are a tribe of Bretons that live along the Biolse River in High Rock, the home province of the Bretons. They are known for their fur armor, bone necklaces, and turbans, and, of course, their horses, which is where their name comes from. Gaiden Shinji was a Red Guard hero of the First Era. He founded the arena in the Imperial City. Anyone who's played Oblivion will be very familiar with that. His famous quote, mentioned in the story and which I describe as warrior's Darwinism, is, "The best techniques are passed on by the survivors." He was regarded by warriors, especially in the Imperial arena, with the kind of reverence usually reserved for the gods. It was not uncommon for fighters in the arena to exclaim things like, "By Shinji," much like how in the real world a shocked exclamation of, "By God," is common. Reachmen are a culture of people believed to be related to Bretons. They live in the Reach, an area of southwestern Skyrim. If you've played Skyrim at all, you're probably familiar with the Forsworn, who are a clan of Reachmen. A cairn is any man-made pile of stones. While it can be for any purpose, I think the cairn here is a memorial, a burial marker given its location. This is a sad, sad story. Mindothrax and Jurafax were twins, separated at birth due to circumstance. When they met on the field of battle, they were so perfectly matched that Mindothrax described it as fighting a mirror of himself. There have been real-world studies on twins like this to help determine how much of a person is genetic and how much is shaped by environment. You've probably heard the term nature versus nurture before, and this is one way that kind of dichotomy is studied. My favorite example of this is the Jim twins. Two identical twins separated at just 4 weeks old led almost identical lives. Both married and divorced a woman named Linda and then married a woman named Betty. They both named their first sons James Allen. They each grew up with an adopted brother named Larry, they each owned a dog named Toy when they were kids, they both had law enforcement training and had worked part-time as deputy sheriffs, and so on. I won't go over the whole thing, but I'll leave a link in the description to a New York Times article on it so you can read it if you like. Mindothrax and Jurafax were just like that, raised separately but developing identical fighting styles, and sadly, brother killed brother without even knowing it. Jurafax unknowingly deprived himself of the chance to get to know his long-lost twin. I think the big lesson here is that you shouldn't rush in. As Mindothrax explains, patiently waiting for that one opening is far more effective and efficient than just banging your head against a problem and hoping it moves for you. Analyze, process, think, and wait to find that one solution that will guarantee your success. The mirror can be found in a few guaranteed places in Norway. First, in the shop of Codus Colonis, a bookseller in Aldbrun. Second, in Balmora in Rithleen's house. Finally, in the Guard Tower in Surrey. It's a skill book, and as you'd expect, the skill it teaches is block. When you read it for the first time, you'll get a permanent 1-point bonus to your block skill. The book also appears in Oblivion and Skyrim, and in Skyrim there's a quest associated with it where you can help Captain Aldous in Solitude better prepare his men for battle by providing him with a copy of the mirror. That's the mirror. What do you think of this story? Did you ever find and read this book? Were there any lessons I missed? Let me know down in the comments. In 2 weeks, we'll look at something a bit different, the art of war magic. There's a poll up right now to determine what we cover after that. Thank you so much for watching. I adore this series. It's my little love letter to a game franchise that's absolutely fantastic. If you want to support the channel, the best way you can do that right now is to like, comment, and subscribe. It tells YouTube that you like my content and the almighty algorithm will recommend my videos to more people. There's a new video every other Tuesday, every Friday, and shorts on Saturdays and Sundays. If you want to check out the whole Elder Scrolls Reading Club playlist, click here. Or click here for a short video showcasing a Resident Evil 5 mod that replaces Sheva with 2B. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.